see Gordon Brown, Berlusconi, Sarkozy, and Germany, all of them, they sit with him in his stupid tent and making deals on the blood of the Libyan people. They say Libya is safe, and it is not safe at all. We want to raise awareness here about the situation of Libya and the relationship between Britain and Gaddafi. Gaddafi and his family, they are corrupt, and they're using the Libyan wealth. They're using the Libyan wealth to persuade and put pressure on European governments to shut up on their human rights abuse. The Libyan regime is the most brutal regime in Africa. Even though we see the governments, those who call for freedom and human rights and democracy, and they want to spread democracy in the Middle East, and they brought the example to those dictators that they demolished the whole Iraq. So Saddam Hussein is the best example for the West to provide to the dictators of Africa. If they don't obey to America and Britain, they will be bombed and they will destroy their country. And when Saddam Hussein, he's been dragged from that hole like a rat. Gaddafi was scared and he changed line of his mass destruction bombs, and he surrendered to the West. So he gave up his mass destruction bombs and he gave it to America, not to the United Nations. And what we see, that Gaddafi is being rewarded from the West, that they will not talk about his regime, they will not talk about his torture, they will not talk about his oppression in Libya. And they say that Gaddafi is the peace, he is the peace worker, he is the peace ally for the Americans and the Europeans in Africa. Go back to the history and see where Gaddafi was. He was the madman of the Middle East. Gaddafi was responsible of many crimes around the world. Gaddafi didn't torture his people only, but he killed innocent people around the world. And the problem that we see now, that the European governments, they've forgotten about Geneva Conventions, they've forgotten about human rights, they've forgotten about democracy, and they make deals with Gaddafi, and they say that Gaddafi is their best friend. Unfortunately, Gaddafi is not stable, and what they do with them, that they made deals, they made arms deals, and they made investment deals like Switzerland. Gaddafi called for terrorist attacks on the Swiss people, and he stopped supplying Switzerland with the oil and the gas, and he kicked out of Libya all the Swiss companies, and he punished Swiss citizens for fake accusation, and he put them in jail now. The European Union just let the Swiss down, and they said we cannot, come into this conflict, they said that they have nothing to do. Sarkozy said Gaddafi is his best friend and he can't say anything against his stupid call. And Sarkozy, and the other one is Berlusconi. Berlusconi is the mafia man. He doesn't care about human rights, doesn't care about freedom, but he cares about oil and gas and money investment in Italy. And we see Gordon Brown, he is very busy with the recession and he wants to get Britain out of the government poverty. So what they did, they made deals with Gaddafi. They don't care. Gordon Brown didn't care about Lockerbie bombing, Yvonne Fletcher, Libyan people, all of them, they go to hell. He just wants to get some money for Britain. Libya is the first or the most the reserves. Libya is the most or the first reservation, has got the first reservation of oil and gas, and that's why Gaddafi's been accepted. Gaddafi's been accepted over his oppression, over his human rights abuse, and he's been welcomed by the British government, and they love him now. Not just this, the guy who's been accused for the Lockerbie bombing, he's been released. They say they released him on compassionate, but the reality is they released him for the oil and the gas. They released him for the oil and the gas, and the guy, he is still alive and he is very well. So what about Lockerbie bombing? What about the victims of Lockerbie bombing? Nobody will talk about them. Yvonne Fletcher, she participated in a demonstration. Libyan protesters stood in the front of the Libyan embassy in 1984. In 1984, Libyan protesters in front of the Libyan embassy in London protested peacefully, and imagine the staff of the embassy, they came out with machine guns and opened the fires. They opened the fire on the protesters. They opened the fire on the protesters, and they killed Yvonne Fletcher, the policewoman. So what we see a peaceful protest guarded by a British police in the front of the Libyan embassy, and the staff from a diplomatic place, they opened the fire and they killed and they injured 21 Libyans, and they killed Yvonne Fletcher. What's happened since then? The British government still negotiate with Gaddafi, and they couldn't get to the man who opened, or to the men who opened the fire. In 1984, Gaddafi celebrated the coming back safely to his group who were in the Libyan embassy. Still till now, the British government is negotiating with Gaddafi to get the compensation. They want the compensation for Yvonne Fletcher. They've forgotten about the criminals who killed her. They've forgotten about Yvonne Fletcher, who lost her life serving the country. That's the hypocrisy of the British government. Not just this, but Gaddafi, the madman, the enemy of the West, he is now the friend of the West. He is the beloved poodle for the West. Even Gaddafi, when he called for jihad against Switzerland, nothing about it.